They say opposites attract, but in this case, it goes deeper than that. The narcissist and the empath don't just find each other, they lock into each other. Like two puzzle pieces that were never meant to fit, but force themselves together anyway. Why? Because one is a taker and the other is a giver. One craves attention, validation, and control. The other craves connection, understanding, and harmony. But this isn't love, it's survival. For the narcissist, the empath is a goldmine, an endless supply of energy, a mirror that reflects back everything they wish they were. The empath listens, forgives, explains, softens. And the narcissist? He consumes, takes, manipulates, charms his way into her world and makes her feel seen, not because he sees her, but because he needs her. Narcissists love empaths for one reason, because empaths give what narcissists can't create themselves: empathy, compassion, safety, emotion, depth. Everything a narcissist secretly envies and knows he cannot sustain. It starts off beautifully. He showers you with attention, he studies you, he mimics your interests, he says all the right things, because a narcissist is always performing. He knows exactly what you've been missing, he becomes that. He plays the soulmate role like a script. Until he doesn't. Until the moment he knows you're emotionally invested. That's when the real dynamic begins. He doesn't want you healed. He wants you hooked. He wants you available, always. He wants you emotional, uncertain, questioning yourself. Because if you start questioning him, the illusion crumbles. And for a narcissist, control is everything. The empath stays, not because she's weak, but because she sees the potential. She feels the pain behind his walls. She wants to fix, to soothe, to prove that love can change him. But here's the truth. A narcissist doesn't want to be changed. He wants to be adored, unchallenged. He wants the attention without the accountability, the intimacy without the vulnerability, the loyalty without the effort. And the empath, in her softness, becomes the perfect target, because she'll explain his behavior instead of confronting it. She'll forgive the lies, the gaslighting, the blame shifting, because she understands trauma, because she feels everything too deeply, because she would never do to someone what he's doing to her, so she assumes he must not realize what he's doing. But he does. Narcissists know exactly how far they can push. They don't stop when you say it hurts. They stop when it stops working. So why does he stay drawn to the empath? Because she validates his existence. Because her love feels like a drug. Because she gives and gives and gives and doesn't demand anything in return. Until one day she does. Until one day she wakes up and everything changes. The moment the empath stops explaining herself, the narcissist panics. The moment she sees the pattern, he loses power. Because now she's not reacting, she's observing. Now she's not pleading, she's walking. Now she's not waiting, she's remembering who she is. And that's the end of the game, because without control, the narcissist has nothing. He only thrives in relationships where someone is constantly adjusting to his mood, where someone else is responsible for managing the emotions, while he avoids his own. He needs someone to believe in the fantasy, because he can't face the reality. But the empath? She's no longer playing along. She's no longer mistaking pain for passion. She's no longer romanticizing someone's chaos. She's done. And when she's done, she doesn't need closure. She becomes it. When the empath leaves, it's not sudden. It looks sudden on the outside. But on the inside, it's been building. Quietly, day by day, lie by lie. Each moment of confusion. Each excuse made on his behalf. Each time she silenced her intuition just to keep the peace. That's how empaths survive narcissists. They adapt. They learn to minimize their needs. They become excellent at self-blame. They overfunction, overthink, over-apologize, all just to hold together a connection that's built on sand. The narcissist watches this and feeds off it, because every time she shrinks herself, he grows. Every time she forgives something that should have ended things, his ego inflates. Not because he loves her, but because she proves, again and again, that his control is working. But the empath is slowly waking up. Her heart is big, yes, but her soul is louder, And it starts whispering things like, "This isn't love. This isn't who I am. This is making me sick." And eventually, those whispers become her truth. She starts to ask new questions. Not, "Why is he doing this?" but "Why am I staying?" Not, "How can I fix this?" but "What's it costing me to keep fixing this?" And those are dangerous questions to a narcissist, because once an empath starts asking the right questions, she stops tolerating the wrong answers. He'll notice. He'll sense the change before she even says a word. She's quieter, but not broken. She's distant, but not confused. She's watching him, and he hates that. Because narcissists don't fear anger. They fear indifference. They fear losing the audience. And now she's not reacting. She's detaching. She's no longer emotionally available for the drama. She's no longer triggered by the same games. She's tired, but not weak. She's tired because she gave so much love to someone who weaponized it. Narcissists love empaths because empaths see their wounds. They see the child underneath the ego, the trauma behind the temper, and that's what keeps them holding on, the hope that if they love hard enough, they'll heal him. But here's the truth. You cannot heal someone who doesn't want to be helped. You cannot fix someone who doesn't see a problem. You cannot love someone into being ready. Empaths need to hear this. Your love is sacred, but not everyone deserves access to it. Not everyone deserves your time, your energy, your spirit. Just because someone needs you doesn't mean they value you. Just because someone wants you doesn't mean they're good for you. Just because someone says, "I love you," doesn't mean they're capable of loving. Words aren't love. Consistency is, accountability is, safety is. Being seen, heard, and honored, that's love. Not intensity, not jealousy, not manipulation dressed up as passion. And the moment you see that, the whole illusion shatters. You stop confusing struggle for love. You stop confusing adrenaline for chemistry. You stop confusing breadcrumbs for connection. You realize that real love doesn't drain you. It refills you. Real love doesn't make you guess. It makes you feel grounded. Real love doesn't punish you for your emotions. It holds space for them. That's what the narcissist never gave. That's why it always felt like a roller coaster. Because it was never about stability. It was about control. The highs were addictive. The lows were devastating. But the pattern was always the same. Push, pull, blame, guilt, repeat. And now you're done repeating. Now you're choosing peace. Not the silence of suppression, the calm of clarity, the kind of peace that only comes when you stop trying to prove your worth to someone who is never looking. So what happens next? You rebuild, not overnight, but slowly, intentionally. You grieve, you breathe, you get angry, then calm. You cry, then exhale. You begin to see the pieces of yourself that were buried under the survival mode. And one by one, you reclaim them. Your laughter, your softness, your creativity, your freedom, your voice. Because narcissists silence voices, not just in arguments, but in your soul. And now your voice comes back. And it says, "I'm not responsible for his wounds. I'm not here to save him. I'm allowed to walk away." And you do. Not because you stopped loving, but because you started loving yourself more. That's what they never expect. That one day the empath will walk. And when she does, she never returns the same. You don't walk away because you've stopped caring. You walk away because you've started realizing your care was being weaponized. You were giving your best to someone who only saw it as something to exploit. And that's the moment everything starts to shift. When you stop asking, "What did I do wrong?" and start asking, "Why did I believe I had to earn love in the first place?" Because the empath has a pattern too. She gives more when she's afraid. She proves herself when she feels unseen. She explains herself when she's being disrespected, hoping that clarity will stop the pain. But with a narcissist, clarity doesn't stop the pain. It fuels the control. Because every time you explain your heart, he stores that data. He learns what triggers you, what softens you, what breaks you just enough to pull you back in. That's the narcissist's method. Study you, charm you, confuse you, drain you, and still, you stayed. Not because you were naive, but because you were hopeful. Not because you were broken, but because you were loyal. Not because you were weak, but because you still believed in love. But now you've stopped trying to be the exception. You've stopped hoping you'd be the one to change him. You've stopped setting yourself on fire just to keep someone else warm. Now you've turned inward. You've started listening to the voice that got quieter every time you stayed. The voice that whispered, "This doesn't feel right." The voice that said, "You don't have to keep doing this." The voice that got drowned out by apologies with no action. By cycles disguised as passion. By pain masked as love. But not anymore. Now you're listening. And it's telling you the truth. You were never too emotional. You were surrounded by people who feared emotions. You were never too sensitive. You were just tuned in to what others were numb to. You were never too intense. You just loved with a depth they didn't know how to hold. And that's why narcissists love empaths. Because you feel everything. You love deeply. You believe in people. You stay when others walk away. You pour into broken places, hoping they'll bloom. But no one told you that some people prefer to stay broken, because their power depends on it. Narcissists don't want to heal. They want to dominate. They don't want to grow. They want others to shrink. They don't want partnership. They want control disguised as love. And the empath? She's their perfect match, until she awakens. Until she realizes her love isn't being cherished. Until she understands that relationships don't need to hurt to be real. Until she finally sees the difference between sacrifice and self-destruction. You're seeing it now. You're feeling it now. And that means you're waking up. Not in anger, but in truth. You don't hate him. You just finally see him. Without the illusion, without the fantasy, without the hope that he'll one day be who he pretended to be. That's what healing is. Not pretending it never hurt, but finally admitting that it hurt way more than you were willing to say. Because you didn't want to seem dramatic. You didn't want to be abandoned. You didn't want to give up on someone. But you're not giving up. You're letting go. And there's a difference. Letting go says, I've given enough. I've tried enough. I've stayed long enough. Now I choose peace. And the peace that follows letting go of a narcissist, it's unlike anything you've known, because you're no longer walking on eggshells. You're no longer decoding mixed messages. You're no longer apologizing for feeling too much. You're no longer exhausted from trying to be loved. You're just free. Free to trust again, starting with yourself. Free to rebuild. Free to rest. Free to feel joy that isn't followed by guilt. And that's where you begin again. Not by rushing into someone new, but by falling back into your own wholeness. Reconnecting with the version of you that existed before you were manipulated into believing you weren't enough. Because you are, you always were, and now you're starting to believe it too. It wasn't your fault that you loved so well. It wasn't your weakness that you trusted again. It wasn't your desperation that you hoped he would change. It was simply your humanity. Your capacity to believe in the best of people. Your willingness to open your heart when others kept theirs closed. That quality he coveted became the very thing he exploited, because when an empath loves, she brings light into darkness. She brings warmth into coldness. She brings trust into suspicion. And a narcissist, starved for validation, will feast on that generosity. But generosity without boundaries is a banquet for abuse. And you were serving an all-you-can-eat buffet. You didn't realize that every time you forgave him, you were teaching him how far he could go. You didn't realize that every time you tolerated the lies, you were lowering your own standards. You didn't realize that every time you dropped your needs, you were burying parts of yourself. Until one day, you woke up and found yourself missing, lost in the blur of his mood swings, empty from his emotional takeovers, exhausted by his endless demands, and all you wanted was to feel like you again. That's when the empath begins to fight. Not externally, internally. She fights for her worth. She fights for her boundaries. She fights the urge to explain and excuse. She fights for her voice to be heard, this time by herself. The battle isn't loud. It's quiet and stubborn. It's the decision to say no when every part of you aches to say yes. It's the choice to leave the conversation when you know it'll only loop back to manipulation. It's the courage to stop giving second chances when the first one never changed him. He'll notice. He'll escalate. He'll try to pull you back in with grand gestures and empty promises. That's the narc's final act, the Hoover. He swoops in, sucking you back into his world. He uses charm, tears, and false vulnerability to reel you in. But you're different now. You recognize the tactic. You see the pattern. You feel the pull, and you step back. You heal in the space between the lies and the apologies, between the chaos and the calm, between who he was and who you're becoming. It's in that space you rebuild yourself. You reconstruct your sense of worth. You reestablish what kindness feels like when it's not conditional. You relearn what honesty sounds like when it's spoken out loud. You rediscover pleasure that isn't tainted by guilt. And as you rebuild, you'll notice something magical. You start attracting people who match your healed energy, people who value your empathy instead of exploiting it, people who listen without waiting for their turn to speak, people who ask you about your dreams and help you reach them. That's the true reward for an empath who leaves a narcissist. Not just freedom from abuse, but the magnetism of authenticity. Because nothing draws good people like the glow of someone who's authentic. He lied to you, but now you know the greatest truth of all. Your sensitivity is your superpower. Your compassion is your compass. Your depth is your destiny. So what happens next? You live out loud. You feel deeply. You love fiercely, but wisely. You open your heart with discernment. You keep your boundaries firm. You let your empathy guide you, not bind you. You turn your story into a beacon for others. You share your journey so fellow empaths see it's possible to break free. You speak your truth so people know they're not alone in their pain. You stand tall in your healing so abusers can no longer define you. And that, at its core, is why narcissists love empaths. Because empaths heal, and healed empaths lead. They lead by example. They lead with courage. They lead with love that's tempered by wisdom. This is the path you've chosen. A path of feeling everything and owning it. A path of compassion and self-respect. A path of depth and honest connection. He loved you so long as you were giving. Now watch you love yourself so long as you're worthy. He craved your energy. Now you preserve it. He needed your light to feed his darkness. Now you shine it on the world. Because at the end of your journey, you realize the most powerful love story is the one you have with yourself. And nothing, no lie, no manipulator can ever take that away. If you made it this far, it means something inside you is waking up. You're not broken. You're not alone. You're just finally seeing clearly. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become now. You're not here to save people who only came to take. You're here to rebuild, stronger, wiser, and at peace. You're here to protect the heart they tried to dim. This was your reminder. You didn't lose. You learned. You didn't break. You awakened. You didn't give too much. You just gave it to someone who couldn't receive it. Now, you take it all back. Your voice, your light, your power. You loved the wrong person. But now you're becoming the right person for yourself. If this message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe for more truth that heals. Comment, "I'm taking my power back," if you're done letting narcissists write your story. Turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of clarity again. This is not the end. This is your new beginning. And this is the motivational call.